Support WrestleTalk, home of Luke Owen, whatever WrestleTalk is, and whoever Luke Owen is. Quote the Raven, nevermore.
Support WrestleTalk!
Donate on Patreon. Does AEW need CM Punk? I'm Ollie Davis. This is Luke Owen. Welcome to the WrestleRamble magazine Saturday edition. Of course, press the thumbs up button. Leave us a lovely comment with your thoughts on CM Punk potentially returning to wrestling, speculatively returning to wrestling. Okay, what's happening, Luke?
Okay, so I'd say since All In last year, there have been teasers that CM Punk might be doing something with the Young Bucks, right? And the Bucks have always quite openly talked about it. They've obviously talked about CM Punk said that if he wanted to step back into a wrestling ring, they'd be the first person that he calls. They said that we speak to him all the time. They did an interview recently with Chris Van Vliet, where they were talking about how at one point, the three of them, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, were sat in a hotel room and had convinced themselves they were going to WWE. But in that interview also said that we expect Pac will be back by the time we go on TV in October, and we have talked to CM Punk. Not about joint business, no, we're always in contact with him.
Yeah, they've said that forever, going
That's
back
what I mean,
before All Out. They're always texting.
Yeah, All In, it was very much like there was even people who thought that Pac or Punk are going to show up at All In, right? That's what we all kind of speculated. Turns out, no one did. But it's fine. Jericho did, I guess.
Well, there was one, I remember just like 2 days before that, Pac was announced, well, Neville as it was back then, was announced that his contract with WWE was over in late August. Matt Jackson and Marty Scurll posted a video of them just 2 days before All In, looking in a toy shop, and they found the Neville figure.
That's
and they were like, ooh.
Yeah.
But he didn't turn up.
So CM Punk has always been sort of like, will he, won't he? He's been very cagey about the whole thing, but has recently been more talking about, hey, never say never in the world of professional wrestling. Never say never about me stepping back into a ring again. And then he had that wrestling return recently. Do you remember this? You might remember this better than I do.
Oh yeah. Well, it was one of many. So this was
Silas's Young promotion, right?
Yeah, this was back in April. It was at a venue that was about to be closed down, and it just so happened to be the venue where CM Punk had one of his first matches. So for sentimental reasons, apparently, he ran in at the end of one of the matches in a mask, hit a GTS and ran out. Mm-hmm. A very sloppy-looking GTS.
It was a little bit, yeah.
Very sloppy getting in the ring. But hey, he's had time. But no one thought anything of it. It was only when Silas Young said, oh yeah, it might have been a Punk there. And then it was obvious. And then more reports, I think Sean Ross Sapp said there were at least 2 other occasions where he's done this since 2014.
Yeah. So, he stepped back into a wrestling ring. And then we got the announcement on Thursday.
Here's the big one.
That CM Punk will be part of Starrcast 3 with a live mic, and he's going to do an interview there. He was at Starrcast 1 last year, but that was part of Pro Wrestling Tees. Wasn't really connected to Starrcast, just Pro Wrestling Tees also had something on at the same time. This, however, is Starrcast. This is Conrad Thompson has booked Punk for an appearance. Don't know if he's doing meet or greets yet, but he is going to do an interview. And the two aren't connected. Obviously, Starrcast and AEW are not connected. We do have to make that clear, otherwise Booker T gets very upset and Dave Meltzer gets a lot of flack. So we've got to make it very clear. They're two very different things.
Yes, they are separate companies, but they have a working relationship.
They have only ever run shows together.
Yeah, it's like saying, New Japan and Ring of Honor. Of course they're separate companies. We can all see that. But they work together all the time, exclusively. No, there are no other conventions also running alongside All In. Or AEW. There are no other wrestling promotions running with Starrcast. So they are linked. This isn't crazy speculation, people.
Well, tell that to Booker T and Conrad, because they got very upset when Dave Meltzer accidentally printed that Booker T had pulled out of All Out when he meant to say he'd pulled out of Starrcast. And Conrad was like, we're not connected to AEW. We just happen to run fan conventions on the same weekends that they run their big shows, basically in the same building as them. Yeah. He got really upset about it. So, CM Punk confirmed for Starrcast. This much we do know. The next night after that is All Out. And this is AEW's big show. Double or Nothing was a huge show for them. This is much, much bigger. This is like our final stop before we get to TV. And the big angle they had to close out Double or Nothing, the one that got everyone talking about it the following day, other than people saying like, man, that was a really good show, can't wait to see what they do next, was Jon Moxley debuting at the end of the night, attacking Jericho, attacking Omega, setting up Mox versus Omega for All Out. So who's to say, now that they're heading in towards TV in October, that they're not going to bring in a certain Punk to drum up some really big mainstream interest and get people's eyes on the product when it debuts in October?
He is, without a doubt, without question, the only name out there that would matter, really, in terms of people who have left. Because everyone's with a company at the moment. And see, of all the people who have left WWE, they've all either come back or faded into obscurity. Like, Big Cass and Enzo Amore, they're not really draws. Alberto Del Rio, he's off doing whatever he's doing at the moment. But CM Punk has always maintained this air of mystique and real significance, especially in my eyes. I'm very transparent about this. I love the guy. He's one of my heroes. I'm borderline obsessed with him. No, obsessed with him for 4-5 years when he was on top of WWE. I
was thinking about you while I was making this thumbnail, because I was just getting up this picture of CM Punk, and I was like, that is going to be a picture that will just make Oli Davis smile.
He's a handsome guy.
He is a handsome
dude. The
dude.
guy can go through any haircut, any form of facial hair, and I like it.
Even when he had that Wolverine mutton chop looks, and I was like, I'm not sure about this one, Punk. But he still pulled it off.
One of the sexiest images I've ever seen of a man is CM Punk in only his Y fronts, down by the ring, being chased around by Booker T or something at a house show in a dark match, like after TV segment thing.
Yeah,
I love the guy too much. And there's the long running joke of CM Punk to AEW confirmed, CM Punk Wrestling Return confirmed. It's big, which is a joke at our expense as well, because we just want him to return. I want him to return. I was going to say, I think
the joke very much is on us, because we are the people that are always sort of like doing the thumbnails, doing the teaser. Will he return? Punk tweeted out this. Does this mean a wrestling return? So when we are going like, CM Punk to AEW confirmed, we're very much parodying ourselves, constantly saying these sorts of things, and wrestling media constantly saying these sorts of things, because as you say, he is a guy that for the last 5 years has had his social media scrutinized, being like, what does this mean? What does this tweet mean? He said the word wrestle. Does that mean he's returning? He's going to be at Ring of Honor because they've got a show this weekend, something along those lines. He
about a month ago, he went on a bit of a Twitter rant. I think it was when you were in Peru, actually. You might have missed it. Where he effectively had a go at people for this. He said, look, why do I have to, I want to tweet about movies, I want to tweet about ice hockey, and every time I do that, I'll have a few conversations with people, and then boom, everyone floods it. When you're coming back to wrestling, what do you think of AEW? I just want to talk about movies or this. Stop talking to me about wrestling. And I'd feel sympathetic with him.
I do too.
But 2 weeks before that, he posted up like a Snapchat story thing or a Twitter video, I don't know what the social media things are, of, guys, big announcement. I've got the latest star going to AEW. And it was an obscure Smoky Mountain Wrestling mummy character from the 90s. So he does stoke those fires. Last year, he kept on posting all-in graphics, which coincidentally was also the Chicago Cubs, his beloved baseball team, their slogan for the year.
Yeah.
But it was also all-in the first pre-log for AEW. So he does bring this upon himself. I'm probably he doesn't know which one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I feel sympathy for him in all cases, really. Even if when he is sort of stoking the fire, he is very much bringing it upon himself. But then there are times where he's like, I want to talk about this. People want to talk about when he's coming back. Like even when Starrcast III was announced, and their logo is the Chicago flag, is like the middle third. Everyone was like, oh, this means CM Punk's returning, right? Like, and that it almost feels like it's just that's now the done joke. But imagine at the end of All Out, CM Punk you start to hear, you just hear wana 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 wana, and then Living Colour plays, and Punk does come out in a front of. Well, I wouldn't do that bit. I would just do the proper intro, and then you have CM Punk come out the first time in front of a wrestling crowd, like as CM Punk in Chicago of all places. It's the 8th year anniversary of Money in the Bank 2011, and those 8th anniversaries are always very important to certain people.
It's the biggest one.
It's the big one, really, I'd say. It goes like 5, 8, then 50. Like, those are the ones you really want to celebrate. Yeah. So, I don't know, man. But the question we should come to, really, is, do AEW need CM Punk?
Yes.
Is that an answer to the question? Or is you just saying yes?
It's me agreeing that we should talk about the title of the video now.
Yes.
So we did a very similar thing before All In, and we both said back then that they need a Daniel Bryan or a CM Punk, because Daniel Bryan's contract was still semi up in the air, even though he'd made his wrestling return.
I think, in fact, you and I might have said on a video, they'll never sell out 10,000 seats unless they have a CM Punk or a Daniel Bryan.
And so happy to be wrong.
Egg on our face, and very happy to have that egg on my
delicious.
face. Oh, nom 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 nom.
But back then I would have said, well, I did say it's on record, yes, they need a Punk or a Bryan. Now, they are at a very good place, and they've got so much traction, and they've got a TV deal on TNT and all their pay-per-views, while they've had their, difficulties with production issues and the commentary and stuff. The standard is where it should be. Like, the AEW shows, they've got their flaws. They're not perfect yet, but that's what wrestling should be as a standard. Mm-hmm. And then WWE's benchmark is all the way down here. It's not even in the same league table. So that's very good. And they've built this promotion so well without names like Punk. It's really admirable that they've not used him or had to rely on it. So no, AEW doesn't need CM Punk, I would say. But
I was going to say there is a but coming.
It would be excellent.
I'm going to half agree with you, half disagree. I'm going to agree in the sense that no, they don't need him, because they've managed to get to this point without names like CM Punk. Really, you could argue that the only big mainstream name they had was Jericho. And then after Double or Nothing, you could add Moxley to that list as well, because you've got the former Dean Ambrose in there. So those are your two ex-WWE guys. The rest of them are Omegas, the Bucks, SCU, Lucha Brothers, guys that are known on the indies, might not be known to a much wider audience. But I think now, through Double or Nothing, through Fight Fest, Fight for the Fallen, and just the way that they've conducted themselves as a business, they are names that people recognize in the wrestling world now. I'd say since All In last year, I think they really have built themselves a profile so that wrestling fans, regardless if they just watch WWE, know the names of Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks. And that's certainly helped by New Japan and the Ring of Honor stuff that they've did. I'm not going to, certainly not going to take away any of the work that they did there. So I just think that now they are at a point where they have got quite a big profile about them. And with Moxley and Jericho in that mix as well, they could easily go to TV and be absolutely fine, and they will get really good ratings, and they'll have a really good weekly TV product, at least in-ring wise. You could certainly, as you say, production issues aside, they'll certainly have good in-ring wrestling. But if you were to have a CM Punk on that as well, that's the name. And that is the name that would take it from here all the way up to here. So not only are you then like, man, this TV show should do really, really well, then you're like, this is must-see television, because it is the wrestling return of CM Punk. And that is where that's where I fall on this. I don't think they need him in principle, but if they did have CM Punk, then that is going to be like, that's stratosphere levels.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. Towards to that effect.
So what do you think, if you had to bet, is he... So that... Obviously, he's not gonna.
It's gonna be the question on the bonus. The bonus question for Wrestle League.
Yeah, for forever now. Obviously, I don't think he's gonna say at the end of this interview at Starrcast, by the way,
I'll see you tomorrow.
Because that just flubs one of the last remaining great wrestling returns you can fantasy book.
Yeah.
Like when Kurt Angle came, I had so many ideas for Kurt Angle, and it was just, oh yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame now. No! But with Punk, you want to do something bigger. So I think in the interview, he might just put a pin in it. It could go one of two ways. I think he might go, look, this is me doing an interview to say once and for all, I'm done with wrestling.
Yeah.
And that part of my life is over now. Of course, that's exactly what someone would say. But I'm worried. That's like my big anxiety. Now it seems to be more possible with all the things that are fitting into place. Now I'm getting anxious that it won't happen. I can't just pretend that it will all the time.
I was going to say the other side of that as well is that people like you and I probably making it worse for fans by even speculating about this sort of thing, because then if he doesn't show up at All Out, will it be a disappointment of a show because CM Punk didn't return? LOL. The only other point to bring up on this before we jump into the mailbag is a report that Fox are now negotiating with WWE to get NXT onto FS1. And that now looks to be a very, very much a possibility.
That's crazy.
And the reason for this is because AEW are likely going to air on Wednesdays. So FS1 can air NXT as counter-programming to TNT and AEW. And Meltzer had a brilliant way of phrasing this in The Observer, where he said, it's a no-lose situation for WWE. A, they're getting money for NXT, which is something they never do. B, even if they get 10% of AEW's audience, that's 10% of AEW's audience that isn't watching AEW. All you're putting that there, not to beat them, not to compete with them, but to siphon away viewers. And you're like, it's kind of crazy, but it's kind of a genius business move in a certain sense, because like NXT is the hardcore wrestling product, AEW is a hardcore wrestling fans product. So having those two going head to head actually is kind of like a brilliant move on WWE's part. But if you had CM Punk, then you're not going to be too worried about NXT running head to head with you, are you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's tremendously exciting. But I can't. So yeah, I can't. Yeah, I want him back so bad.
I know, man. If you want to submit a question to the mailbag, all you've got to do is become one of our awesome pledge hammers on Patreon at any dollar amount. Head on over to patreon.com/WrestleTalk and you'll get involved with Patreon. I was about to plug the Almanac there. I was about to say Big Cartel.
It's a great book.
While you're doing that, go to WrestleTalk.BigCartel.com. It's a good book. This question comes in from Austin Tussey. Which real-life wrestlers would you pick to be a good fit in CGW? I'd probably go for Orange Cassidy or Joey Ryan.
Oh, those are very good shouts, both of them. Particularly, they feel colourful in a way that CGW would. We'll get to CG Dub next week.
Yeah,
we've got too big a mailbag.
Unfortunately, yeah, the mailbag was very, very full today. I would go for Chris Brooks. I think it's a good shout because he'd love it. Like he would absolutely love like the comedy aspect of it and how crap it is. But obviously the real answer we're looking for here is CM Punk.
Yes, yeah, CM Punk would be the one to push those ratings into the stratosphere. I think Santino Marella is an excellent comedic performer, so I would also say him.
I can't remember if you were here. I went on a bit of an Orange Cassidy kick.
A very low effort.
A very low effort kick. And I just watched match after match after match. I fell into a bit of a YouTube hole of just watching lots of Orange Cassidy
It's
matches.
easy to do with him.
He's so watchable. He's great. This comes in from Nate, who says, hello, Ollie, Luke, Laurie, Pete, Randy, Andy, and housemate Simon. I finally became a Patreon member to ask you a question. Do any of you listen to Jim Cornette's podcast? He can be very dated in what he believes is good wrestling, but he also is a walking encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge and keeps up with current promotions. He is commonly not a fan of the Young Bucks or Omega and sees their styles as very gimmicky and catered to a gaming-only audience. One of his criticism got me thinking was their brand of comedy. He doesn't see much of a difference between WWE's hokey S-word and the Librarians and Nakazawa Fighter Fest promos and gaming moves/costumes. He doesn't believe their style of wrestling will age well. What will we say in 20 years when we go back and rewatch the matches from Double or Nothing or Fighter Fest, Fight for the Fallen? What is your opinion? He's got a follow-up question, which we'll get to after you've answered that.
I totally agree with the Librarian stuff. It's not funny. It really doesn't work.
It's fallen a bit flat.
Yeah. And it's difficult because the whole crowd wants to love everything, and you can see themselves like,
no, I'm going to force myself to laugh at this.
It's like watching Will Ferrell movies late 2010. You know, it's just I want to like this, man, but it's not funny.
The Step Brothers in that period.
No, that was way before.
Was it? Oh, thank God for that. I was going to say, don't be
Well,
bad mouthing Step Brothers.
Yeah. But I watched The House, you see, recently.
Oh, I see. Right.
Patchy.
I like Jason Mantzoukas in it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, him and everything.
Yeah. More Derek.
But yes, so the Jim Cornette is, like you say, an incredibly smart person, and he has his particular style of wrestling that he enjoys and what he thinks wrestling should be. I guess the problem with that is that wrestling is much larger than one viewpoint.
Yeah.
And the worst thing you can do is get stuck in your viewpoint, and while the rest of the wrestling industry and art form moves on.
Exactly.
And, like in 20 years' time, it might move back to that style that Jim Cornette likes. So there's no flexibility there in his rigid opinion, and I think that's what draws him up. It is a gimmick, really, but he does also believe it. He's a very nice guy. He's so witty. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a few times and working with him. And he's so funny and, yeah, like you said, smart. But his view of wrestling is too rigid, I think. Yeah.
I think it's also kind of unfair to say, like, what we're going to think of these matches in 20 years' time, because, like, the times move so quickly now. Like, you could go back and watch a movie from 20 years ago and you'll be like, man, that's dated poorly. Or, like, CGI in movies in 2001 was like, I remember going to see some of those movies and be like, my God, this is like the greatest thing ever. The movies will never surpass this. But if you go back and watch them now, you're like, man alive, this CGI is quite bad.
I mean, I tell you where Cornette will probably fall down there is because if you go back and watch old wrestling matches, it's the ones that were very athletic and very high spot filled for their time that don't feel as dated as the slow, more methodical, thought-out style that Cornette prefers.
Yeah.
Like, you go back and watch Dynamite Kid, Tiger Mask, like that feels like that could take place today, and it would be like a pretty good 205 Live match.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, 205 Live matches are better than that match now, really.
Yeah.
If you put them up side by side, of course, one was 30 years before the other.
Well, that's it, yeah. Hogan Andre at WrestleMania 3, for its time, was probably an excellent wrestling match. But to go back and watch it now, it is two giant men lumbering around a ring. And it's actually, this was talked about on How To Wrestling in one of their very early episodes when they did How To Hogan, where Joe watched it for the first time and she said, it's the sort of wrestling that made me not want to be a wrestling fan. Like, when I picture wrestling, that's what I pictured, was two men slowly moving around a ring, not really doing anything, and then you do a finish. Whereas, but now wrestling's completely different. So, yeah, I don't think it's fair to kind of compare things, like, to compare Hogan Andre to, the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers. Also, thank you very much for my cup of milk with some tea in it.
Oh, come on. Look, I'm just going to stop giving you milk in anything. Nothing makes you happy.
No, it does. It's just
I'm doing like a pipette of milk, and you're like, oh, there's so much milk in here.
A dash of milk is what you want. Also follows up saying, have you seen the DDP yoga video with Big Cass talking about his anxiety and depression? Props to him for admitting he had issues, was in the wrong, and got help. Hopefully he can distance himself from Enzo.
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I've read some of the things. And
so is he actually distancing himself from Enzo? They're not doing that, Enzo and Kaz XL?
Well, I don't know about that. I think Nate is just saying...
Oh, hopefully he can.
Yeah, hopefully he can, because Enzo doesn't seem to have had that same period of self-reflection.
No. Had terrible fights with Joey Janela.
Did you read that Moxley specifically requested to work with Cass on a show?
I did not.
So, yeah, Cass is obviously... There's a very good part to Cass, and unfortunately at the end of his WWE run, his personal demons sort of undid him there. So, hopefully he does better.
Dizziest Bloke Going Today says, which wrestling podcast would you say is underrated? For me, it's Primetime with Sean Mooney. I'm getting into Sean's content.
I haven't listened to that. I only listen really regularly to the Wrestling Observer Radio, and I would say that's underrated because it's so good.
It is good.
I take Dave Meltzer for granted so much, but he's like, his knowledge, his passion, his just tenure of covering one specific area is astounding.
It really is, yeah. I mean, I don't think you can say that the AE podcast is underrated, because I think it gets a lot of plaudits, and correctly so. But I'm going to give a shout out to the Married Marks podcast. I really enjoyed their work. Going in Raw.
Going in Raw. Steve here.
They've got an excellent podcast, the two of them. I mean, there's some really, really good wrestling podcasts out there.
If there's a really good pay-per-view, and like those days where you just can't get enough of opinions on the thing you just saw, I will. Yeah, that's when I go to Going in Raw.
Yeah. Tom Delve says, "Hi, Chopper Pete and the team. Do you think that Becky and Seth's stories being so Do you think that with Becky and Seth's stories being so entwined now, we're going to get Becky, somehow in a babyface way, going after Sable, giving Brock an ultimatum, put the title on the line, even better his career, or Sable is going to get it?"
I mean, don't put anything past this company that booked Becky the way they did earlier this year. So, yeah, I can see that happening. I think it's an awful idea, though, unfortunately.
Abhinav says, "Hey, Luke, Pete, Laurie, Simon, Ollie, SoCal Val, and name retracted. We were all hoping to see Sasha Banks at Extreme Rules, but it didn't happen. Looking at her social media, it's more or less clear that she's not coming back. Now, as Bayley needs a friend for her story to continue, what about Dakota Kai? Both of them can be ponytail sisters as a tag team. They have to be more or less the same person. They may not be bad as a tag team. What do you guys think? But deep down, all of us know the only person that can save Bayley is Sting, the huggable Scorpion tag team. Lots of love. Laurie's #1 fan, Abhinav."
So 2 things there. Were we all waiting for Sasha Banks to return on Extreme Rules?
Okay, so you weren't here for this. On the SmackDown before Extreme Rules, and actually the Raw as well, they were heavily hinting that the reason why Bayley is going to struggle is because she doesn't have a friend in her corner. All of Nikki Cross's promos were, you had a friend, but that friend is not here anymore. And you don't have a friend to back you up, and that's why you're going to lose. And commentary kept saying, she did have a friend. They were the tag team champions, but we haven't seen her in months.
Well, they never said Sasha.
They never said Sasha's name.
They just said her.
They kept saying that she had a friend. They were the tag team champions. We haven't seen her in months. And it was very much... And it came out around this time that there was a report that, yes, Sasha is expected to be there on Sunday. So, yes, we were almost expecting Sasha to be there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we were all hoping to see Sasha Banks rather than expecting.
Yes.
I don't want to see Sasha Banks back in WWE. I think, yeah, I want to see her in AEW. And also, no, Bayley doesn't need a friend.
No, and she doesn't need because the story's moved on now. We've moved past this. She needs a friend storyline.
None of the women's division need friends. That's one of the worst things about how WWE book that division. So everyone's got to be friends with someone or they're bitching against something.
Matt Edmonds says, "After having the privilege of attending both Fyter Fest and Fight for the Fallen, it is obvious to me that no one has gained more star power than Darby Allin. After seeing him for the first time at Fyter Fest, I did. I realised how over he was with me until Fight for the Fallen, and judging by the reaction he got from the live crowd, I'd say I'm not alone. Do you see Darby as a potential main event babyface in AEW? Also, which do you prefer more, Fyter Fest or Fight for the Fallen? Being there live at both events, I'd say I had more fun at Fight for the Fallen, but both were excellent shows. I still haven't seen Fight for the Fallen yet."
Yeah, I haven't either. I was on holiday. I haven't had a chance to catch up. But Darby...
I was away that weekend.
I thought Darby Allin... is that match with Cody was brilliant.
Yeah, it was a star-making
really
match.
Enjoyed it. And yeah, we'd seen him at Progress earlier in the year, Darby Allin, and he insane there. I just keep on thinking about that insane trustful back bump he took on the ring apron.
Thing, yeah.
Incredible. I mean, I look at him now, I don't see a potential main eventer ever. But that's not to say that can't happen, and Kofi Kingston is the WWE champion right now. These things can happen. But at the moment, I just see him as sort of a very, very good mid-carder.
Yeah.
Just because the guy is very, very small.
But there is always time.
Yeah.
There's always time to build.
Yeah, and not to say that small, if you're shorter, you can't become really over in the main event spot. But it is a lot harder, especially because he's not just short. He's very thin.
I think he can certainly get in there with main eventers, but I don't think it's going to be something that happens in the next few months. I think it's going to be something that you build over the next couple of years and really build like a cult following behind him before you then push him into that sort of main event spot. Chris Thorne says, will WrestleTalk ever have a shake-up for the Rambles? I've enjoyed the different pairings. I'm glad someone did. While some of you lads have been on holiday, but I'm glad to get you originals back. Maybe every now and again it could be shaken up. Also, why isn't Pete in the Patreon banner with you guys? Hashtag #PushChopperPete.
Because we made that, we should probably update the Patreon banner.
Well, we were also going to update the YouTube banner as well, but I figured that we would wait until we were doing all of them at once rather than do it. So when we do one, we will do all of them.
Yeah, I still need to book this photo shoot that I want to get us all on. The Rambles, the podcasts I listen to, I prefer it when it's always the same people. So, and from everything I've researched, I think that's what the audience want as well. So we will only ever shake up when we have to for scheduling reasons. Otherwise, we'll stick to the norms.
Absolutely, I will agree with that. I do have another comment here, but I don't think I put down your name, so I'm going to come back to that one. But I'll do Scott's message first. But it said, it could be worse. If Bischoff was in charge of Raw, he probably would have had Lesnar drop the belt to Hogan now at the reunion show. In all seriousness, I hope you agree with me that Seth and Kofi have suffered from a lack of a big-name feud. Unfortunately, because of the recent 50-50 booking history, there really are no dominant heels to put in these spots. At this point, I feel like you could only concoct a mid-card feud, no matter how big it appears on paper. Kofi Randy could generate heat, but outside of Triple H putting him over at Saudi Super Bad Blood Money in the showdown, it's not like he's been built as anything dominant in recent times. Joe should feel like a big feud, but all he does is lose title matches, hopefully leading into New Era version 164.5 or whatever it is. Character development improves. There is at least some hope with the recent reformation of the club. AJ can generate the heel heat that is missing. Maybe with the Planeteers dropping the tag belts, we can get Bryan back into the picture with Kofi because he's so damn good. That said, I wasn't disappointed in any of the shows this weekend. They were all very fun to watch, obviously referring to Fyter Fest Evolve and Extreme Rules. This is the first time I got to see Evolve. They're going to be here in Michigan in August, and it convinced me to check it out. So maybe I'll give you guys a first-person review come that time. Take care, and thanks again for all the amazing content. I may need to start a support group for my WrestleRamble Extra Addiction. I don't think there was a question in there, Scott, but there's a good mailbag note nonetheless.
Yeah, it was have Seth and Kofi. Oh, yeah, he just said he agrees. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I agree with us.
I agree with us as well. Where do we get to? Dwayne Cooley says, hello, Swaft Nation and Wrestling Talk. This hit me before I watched Fight for the Fallen on Sunday. I'm a fan of Cody and know how good he is, but I seem to struggle to get truly invested in his matches. For instance, his match with Dustin at Double or Nothing and the Bucks at Fight for the Fallen, and even his matches with Omega were a bit too slow and hard for me to get into. While his match with Darby Allin I enjoyed more than those other two combined, is it the story of the match I'm missing, or is Cody's wrestling overrated? What do you guys find the appeal of a Cody match to be? P.S. He does add, P.S. I am a fan of Cody Rhodes. Just want to reiterate that.
I love that bit at the end. But I don't see the appeal of him wrestling.
I find his matches very boring.
Huge fan. It's... So, for me, like Cody Rhodes in WWE, he was always... There was something about him. Like, he was always the guy that I wanted to be pushed more. But then when he left and he did his amazing work rate around the independent scene, he was... Because he was just brought up through that WWE system, really. He never... He did seem out of place initially, I felt.
Yes.
Beyond... But he had the work rate down in terms of just doing show after show after show after show. But he had a different style to what was getting everyone else over. Mm-hmm. Because he was sort of wrestling the WWE style, but he's learnt and he's modified it. And what I think he's come out as now, through that sort of Ring of Honor period, where he was a fantastic world champion, he's a guy who's very good at presenting himself with the blonde hair, the suits, Brandy, the dog. It's just... is it Ghost, the dog?
Pharaoh.
It's just a really good way of packaging himself. But I think he's leveled up so much in ring Wrestling. And when I watched that Darby Allin match and the Dustin match... Dustin, sorry. Two of my favourite matches. Like, he's had my favourite match of the first two AEW shows, which I never thought I'd say, is because he does slow it down. And he is wrestling an 80s style match, all based around psychology and storytelling in 2019 with a bit of a modern twang. I love it. And I love it even more because it's so different to the wrestling on the rest of the card, which is a lot more high-paced, spot-filled stuff.
I'm completely in agreement with you, and I think that's the appeal of a Cody match to me, is that his wrestling style is different to everyone else's on an AEW show. And I really like that. And I've been on record saying this, going into Double or Nothing, him versus Dustin was not a match I was particularly enthused by. I love both guys, but I'm like, there are matches on this card that I'm more looking forward to. Young Bucks versus Lucha Brothers, Omega Jericho, for example. But actually, it was the best match. It was my favorite match of the night. It was unbelievably good. It was so great. If that is not in the top 10 matches of the year, I will be stunned. I'll be absolutely stunned. So yeah, I think it's a very different style to everyone else that's on the card.
In terms of emotional moments, I don't think anything will top it.
No.
Like Kofi's title win at WrestleMania, that was really great and cathartic. But man, the Cody and Dustin, I really felt. The only thing I'd say against Cody is just commit to being either a heel or a face.
Yeah.
And Brandy's got that problem
Brandy's
as well.
had a lot of issues with that.
Yeah, so I just that's the only thing that jars with me, and it does take me out of the matches. I'm like,
Because
choose one, man.
Because he very much seems to be positioned as the babyface in the moment against Sean Spears, who very much is their heel after he's calling himself the chairman now after that chair shot heard around the world. The interview he did with JR on Road to All Out was great. Really, really good.
Where he unveils Tully Blanchard.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
As his manager.
Sorry, the bit that I missed actually was from Chris's original point where he just said, I'm a new Patreon member. You guys helped me through quite a dark time while I was unemployed, and I'm finally in the position to donate to you guys now. I'm loving all the extra content on here as well. Very worth it for nearly £5.
Oh, thank
Because it's
you.
$5. So that was Dwayne's question. Martin says, do you think Vince is ultimately unsatisfied with NXT?
Doesn't watch it.
Let me explain. NXT is ultimately still a developmental brand for WWE. Therefore, it stands to reason that the top guys in NXT should be expected to transition into the main event of Raw and SmackDown, or should it be expected to transition into the main event of Raw and SmackDown? However, since 2012, only 3 former NXT champions have either won the WWE or Universal Championship. As NXT is catering for a different audience, is Vince frustrated with the talent coming through? And perhaps this is the real reason why he didn't, why Triple H didn't get an executive director job.
No. I don't think he really cares about NXT.
No.
And he repackages. If he would keep the characters as they are, as opposed to just completely butchering them on the main roster. If he thought that way about NXT, so I don't think that the reason I don't think Triple H has been put in one of these roles is just because it's more of a political move. If Triple H is going to take over the running of the company, and if Vince is thinking of stepping aside for the XFL stuff, just don't put him in now where ratings are still on the down slope and all that.
I completely agree with you. Also, I think if you were to put Triple H in one of these executive director spots, when Vince then steps aside, if Vince steps aside for the XFL, then you're just going to have to find someone else to replace the role that Triple H has vacated so he can go and take on Vince's role. So I think it's a political move more than anything. Marco Tallon says, who has the most punchable face in professional wrestling today? My vote goes to MJF, but a smug Prince Pretty is pretty good too.
The Miz. Always The Miz.
Yeah.
Even as a babyface, The Miz, he's just got this fantastic punchable face.
My answer is Adam Pacitti. Corey Haynes says, hey, Ollie, Luke, Laurie, housemate Simon, Chopper Pete, SoCal Val, Blake Ham, you piece of S, and nope, that's it. Longtime fan and recent $10 backer. Been listening to you guys since 2017, both YouTube and podcast. Love everything you put out and have a lot of similar interests other than just watching wrestling, such as board games and RPGs. I have 3 questions. My first question is, being that SoCal Val is a wrestling fan too, why don't we see her on the WrestleRamble?
Just scheduling wise. She's only in for a few bits here and there.
Yeah.
And
not when we're recording these. My second question is, will there come a point where Screen Stalker gets a podcast similar to the WrestleRamble but for movies and games?
That is the hope. Eventually, that was one of the first plans, and it all launched, and we're like, oh my God, we've got no time to do that.
Yeah.
So rather than launch it and then drop it every couple of weeks, we're just going to wait until we've got a few more people, and then we can do that.
And my third question is directed more towards Laurie, Luke, and Pete. Being a D&D and RPG fan myself, I'm curious to know if you guys have ever listened to an awesome D&D podcast called The Adventure Zone. If so, what do you guys think? I strongly suggest listening to it. It takes 2 to 3 arcs to really pick up, but they really focus on strong storytelling and put a lot of effort into emotions. Hope this wasn't too long. Love the work you guys do. Keep it up. No, I've not listened to that. I was a Dragon Friends podcast listener for a little while because they were very much like they were a comedy podcast. And I very much enjoyed the comedy aspect of playing D&D.
It was funny.
It was funny. And they also had, it was one of the guys that was from the Axis of Awesome, so it was very music-inspired as well. So they had, guy on stage playing music to, tell the adventure of the story. And that added a lot to it for me. But I've heard the Critical Role is very good. I just don't have time to listen to 6-hour-long podcasts. I've got too many podcasts as it is.
That's a breakthrough that you've just admitted that.
That I have too many podcasts to listen to. Well, that's because I was looking at my list and I was like, I've got a Talking Simpsons Patreon podcast of them reviewing Tiny Toons straight-to-video movie. And, yeah, it's 4 hours long and I haven't got around to finishing it yet. Tom Dell says, hey, Chopper Pete, Laurie, Luke, Simon, Ollie, Randy, Andy, SoCal Val, Grado, Joe Hendry, still holding out for their returns, and you piece of crap, Blake Ham. Tomo, because I bet he's probably watching, and the cool Scandinavian dude that invented the fishmonger and taught you how to say Walter. Anyway, on to the question. Two of the best TV matches I can remember in recent history are Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston gauntlet matches. They went for the majority of the show they were on, and although we already know Seth and Kofi were great, this seemingly pushed them to an even higher level. It left everyone talking about how great they were, and fans got right behind them as the next big champs. With that being said, should the new format of Raw and SmackDown start to have gauntlet matches? That way there won't be any wrestling in the ad breaks, and they can show off superstars they're trying to build for an extended period of time.
No, it's not hard to structure a wrestling show around ad breaks and not have the ad breaks interrupt the wrestling.
It's so difficult.
You don't need to.
You don't understand, Ollie. It's harder than you think.
Stipulations should really only be used when there is a storyline reason for them. And that could be because the title or championship they're fighting for, or number one contendership, or something with stakes dictates it, or it is an element of a personal feud between two people. Not to justify when to say Raw rolls on after this.
Yeah. Connor Kieran says, now I know you don't have a lot of time or people to do so, but I think you should check out 205 Live on a semi-regular basis. It has the best and consistent storytelling across the entire WWE product, even more so than NXT, as they don't have nearly as many people or championships. They focus on what they do well. No ad breaks, just 2 solid wrestling matches a week.
Well, I watched a bit of the Chad Gable-Jack Gallagher match from this week, and it was great.
Yeah, but a lot of people said that I needed to check out the Drake Maverick Mike Kanellis segment, but dude, they're jokes. It's hard to sit there and take them seriously when one of them was beaten in less than a minute by Zack Ryder and the other one was being pinned in his pants in a hotel room because he was going to prematurely ejaculate in front of his wife. It's then for them to stand in a wrestling ring and be like, take us seriously now. I'm like, I don't think I can.
Yeah.
This is very hard for me to take you seriously.
That horse has bolted, my friend.
James J. Dillon says, now that Bray is back with a new character, I think he should ditch the Sister Abigail as a finisher. What do you guys think would be a more fitting move to match the Fiend's character? I like Sister Abigail.
I still like Sister Abigail. It's still part of the character because she was in the Firefly Funhouse segments.
And it's over as his finishing move as well. There was someone in our Raw review that said that Undertaker should give him the tombstone. But I don't think he needs the tombstone. I think that he's got a good finisher as is.
I would like him to have another move, though.
Oh, not saying he can't have another move, but yeah, I don't think you should get rid of that. Do you want to wrap this up, or do you want another one?
Let's have 2 more.
2 more. Hashtag Team LOL says, with the Raw reunion coming up soon, do you think any legends will win the 24/7 title? If so, who? I think we joked about this, saying the $1 Million Man has got to be one of them.
Farouk might not win it, but he will definitely react to a title change.
And what will he say when he sees it?
Good grief. Good grief.
Clam. And Phil Stopford says, if Mark Jindrak was the 4th member of Evolution, would we now have Dave Bautista as Drax? Jindrak was going to replace Orton, or Orton replaced Jindrak as well. So Batista would have still been in Evolution. So we would have still got the career progression.
In your face, Phil Stopford, you don't know what you're talking about.
I'm pretty sure that's the case anyway.
Oh, maybe you don't know what
I
you're
don't know what I'm
talking
talking about. I'm pretty sure it was.
Well, we can answer the question anyway and pretend. So the interesting thing about Batista is that he did work his way through the ranks. He had a little bit of a head start, but he went, he started off in straight DVD stuff.
He did it as a favour to Rob Van Dam. That was the interview that he gave shortly after that film came out. The Wrong Side of Town, I believe it's called, where RVD's the lead star.
But
House
he's
of
the Rising Sun as well.
Yeah,
Maybe
which he
a
did
bit of
after
that,
that,
yeah.
I think. But I think Wrong Side of Town is the one where RVD's the lead star, but Dave Bautista's the one that's front and centre of all the marketing materials. And he said that he did it as a favour to Rob, and it was on that film he got the acting bug, and he wanted to do more of these types of films and sort of build his way up.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this episode. We know we've still got a load of your mailbag questions to do.
So many.
But we will get to them in next week's show. And, of course, we'll have some crap gimmicks as well. But for the meantime, please click the videos that have just appeared on the desk to catch up with the latest awesome WrestleTalk things. And this button right here, which will make you a pledge hammer on Patreon, where you can send in your mailbag questions. I've been Oli Davis, this has been Luke Owen, and that was Rambling.